Hi, this is Togo. Today is May 8, 2020, in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic. Hope you are doing okay. Have you ever felt nervous, restless, or tense? Have you ever had a sense of impending danger, panic, or doom? What is your body pattern of anxiety? Moshe Feldenkrais discussed the body pattern of anxiety in the elusive obvious. Either this book or this book. Let's dissect this chapter. What is anxiety? Anxiety is a normal and often healthy emotion. Can be a positive, useful phenomenon. Assures our safety from risking what we feel would endanger our very existence. Appears when deep in ourselves we know that we have no other choice, no alternative way of acting. Might become a medical disorder such as excessive nervousness, fear, apprehension, and worry, when a person regularly feels disproportionate levels of anxiety. Moshe stated that life is a process of acting, which needs internal organization of oneself to meet and affect the external challenges. When our internal organization becomes faulty or poor with anxiety, it produces poor and faulty moves and performs badly. The more our intents and performances are fixed, the less they are effective. Life is a process of time, and time cannot be fixed. Without learning to know ourselves as intimately as we possibly can, we limit our choice. Life is not very sweet without freedom of choice. Change is very difficult with no alternatives in sight. When then resign ourselves to not dealing with our difficulties as if they were prescribed by heaven. What is an instinct in physiology? An instinct is a complex integration of inborn, inherited, and conditioned reflexes as distinct from acquired or conditioned ones. Among many different instincts, which instinct inhibits motion? Fear is the only one of the instincts inhibit motion. What is the first reaction when an animal is frightened? When frightened, an animal either flees or runs away. In either case, there is a momentary halt. This halt is produced by the first reaction to frightening stimulus. What causes a halt in breathing and what vasomotor disturbances associated with that? A halt in breathing is caused by a violent contraction of all the flexor muscles, especially abdominal region, soon followed by a whole series of vasomotor disturbances, such as an accelerated pulse, sweating, up to micturition, and even defecation, which are produced by an increase of adrenaline content in the blood, which is preparatory to possible violent effort of the heart and other muscles. What does the contraction of the flexors inhibit? The contraction of the flexors inhibit the antagonistic extensors or anti-gravity muscles. Does an initial inhibition of the extensors go together with all the sensations that accompany fear? Yes. Why does a violent contraction of all the flexor muscles occur? For a fair chance of survival. The initial flexor contraction enables the animal to freeze and simulate death if the danger is too near and to protect head and internal organ and viscera, and also bring into operation the stretch reflex in the extensors, which are thus capable of a greater effort when escaping. Does a newborn infant react to slow and small external stimuli, light, noise, smell, and moderate pinching? No. A newborn infant is practically insensitive to slow and small external stimuli. At birth, he hardly reacts to light effects, to noise, to smell, and even moderate pinching. Does a newborn infant react violently to immersion in very cool or hot water? Yes, he reacts violently to immersion in very cool or hot water. How does a newborn react if suddenly lowered or if support is sharply withdrawn? A violent contraction of all flexors with halt of breath is observed, followed by crying, accelerated pulse, and general vasomotor disturbances, i.e., change of pulse, sweating, etc. Is this reaction to falling instinctive? Yes, because this is present at birth. The similarity of reaction of both a newborn infant to withdrawal of support and those of fright or fear in the animal adult is remarkable. The fear of falling elicits the first inhibition of the anti-gravity muscles, and that anxiety is associated with this process. How does Charles Darwin, English naturalist, geologist, and biologist, describe the attitude of fear in his book, The Expression of the Emotion in Man and Animals? He described the attitude of fear as a sinking of the head, the crouching, the bending of the knees, etc. When does the baby start to respond to the very loud noises? When the baby begins to hear better about 3 weeks after birth, the baby will respond also to very loud noises. What are the two branches of the eighth cranial nerve and their main function? The eighth cranial nerve divides near the internal ear into two branches, the cochlear, concerned with hearing, and the vestibular, concerned with equilibrium. Which branch of the eighth cranial nerve is excited from very loud noises, and how does the excitation spread? Very loud noises excite the cochlear branch of the eighth cranial nerve. The excitation follows over to the vestibular branch of the eighth cranial nerve. This irradiation, spreading of excitation, may also excite the 10th cranial nerve, vagus nerve, instrumental in holding breath. What causes the body to sense as anxiety? It is the halting breath that is sensed as anxiety. What kind of sensation does some people describe anxiety as? Some people describe anxiety as a sensation of the heart falling out, or as an emptiness or cold in the region immediately below the sternum. What is the succession of disturbances after the excitation of vestibular branch? Contraction of flexors, halting of breath, accelerated pulse, sweating, blushing, and even micturition or defecation. How many of these enumerated responses will actually occur in the infant? It depends on the intensity, duration, and suddenness of the initial stimulus. An increased tonus of the flexors, halt of breath, and quickening of the pulse accompany even the slightest excitation. Most of the time, the color of the face changes and perspiration takes place. Before the infant can distinguish between different noises, only loud noise elicits the response, which is the same as to the stimulus of falling. How is the adult response different from the infant? In the adult who has learned to control and inhibit his response to most loud noises of habitual occurrence, but it can still be observed with unexpected very loud noises. British physiologist Earnest Starling described auditory reflexes as following. According to the strength of the stimulus, there may be blinking of eyes only, or if the sound is loud, blinking and holding breath. If stronger still, in addition to the above, all movements temporarily cease. And for a very loud sound, indeed the limbs may become toneless and the body may fall. Hungarian biophysicist Greg von Bakasy has shown that loud noises produce eddies in the semicircular canals in such a direction as to make the head tilt reflexively towards the source of the noise. The excitation of the cochlear branch of the auditory nerve irradiate and produce a response as if the vestibular branch had been excited. Does the excitation of the vestibular branch produce any auditory response? Yes, it seems to inhibit audition momentarily while the excitation lasts. If one falls or slips abruptly while being spoken to, one has a vague impression of noise during the period while the writing reflexes operate. To sum up, the inborn fear is that of falling. The anatomical structure makes it imperative that the next fear that can be sensed is that of loud noise. The unconditioned sensation of anxiety is elicited by stimulation of the vestibular branch of the eighth cranial nerve. All other fears and sensations of the anxiety syndrome are therefore conditioned. The basic pattern of all fear and anxiety is the irritation of the eighth cranial nerve through at least one of its branches. The fear of loud noises is not inherited and not instinctive. Fear and anxiety are seen to be the sensation of impulses arriving at the autonomic nervous system from the organs and viscera. The arrival of such impulses to the higher center of the central nervous system is sensed as emotion. Austrian neurologist and the founder of psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud, his contention that anxiety is the central problem of neurosis was seen in the book Anxiety and Neurosis. Paul Schiller, Austrian psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, and medical researcher, finds dizziness to occupy a similar position. He stated that organic change in the vestibular apparatus will be reflected in the psych structure. They will not only influence the tone, the autonomic nervous system, and the attitude of the body, but they must also change our whole perspective apparatus and even our consciousness. The study of the vestibular apparatus may have great importance for the understanding of the psychotic and the neurotic states. Moshe quotes that dysfunction of the vestibular apparatus is very often the expression of two conflicting psychic tendencies. Dizziness occurs in almost every neurosis. The neurosis may produce organic change in the vestibular sphere. Dizziness is a danger signal in the sphere of the ego and occurs when the ego cannot exercise its synthetic function in the senses. But it also occurs when conflicting motor and attitudinal impulse in connection with the desires and the striving can no longer be united. Dizziness is as important from the psychoanalytic point of view as anxiety. Based on physiological source and basis of anxiety, how is the treatment of anxiety considered? Any treatment may be considered as aiming at the extinction of a conditioned response and the formation of a more desirable one in its place. Why is the extinction of the conditioned reflexes never complete in psychiatric treatment? Because of leaving the somatic nervous path untouched. The muscular habit being affected indirectly is often left unaltered. The old conditioned response will gradually be re-established or reinforced. Moshe stated that a closer study of the nervous mechanism concerned with equilibrium is necessary to understand all phenomena accompanied by chronic or habitual muscular contraction. Why does an attacking animal roar instead of an undetected approach to its prey? The advantage of producing a sudden loud noise nearby is twofold. First, sudden loud noise produced nearby elicits the response to falling, i.e., a violent contraction of the flexors, thus momentarily inhibiting the extensors, and give the attacker a better chance by enabling it to pounce on a fixed target instead of a fleeing one. The second advantage of roaring is that the expulsion of the air from the lungs in roaring is conducive to vigorous diaphragmatic muscular contraction, and abates excitement. The attitude of falling body gives the best protection possible for vital organ and viscera, and instills a sense of safety. The flexor contractions, when maintained, are instrumental in restoring the normal undisturbed state. The erect standing pattern is disrupted by partial inhibition of the anti-gravity extensors. A complete inhibition would mean falling face down. When the pattern of flexor contraction reinstated, every time the individual reverts to passive protection of himself, when lacking the means or doubting his power of active resistance. The extensor of anti-gravity muscle are perforce particularly inhibited. What kind of body pattern Moshe observed in introverts? Habitual reduction of their extensor tonus rigidity. Either the head or the hip joints are leaning abnormally forward. Turning the body is achieved by detour or roundabout means and not in the simplest direct way. What kind of body pattern Moshe observed in extroverts? Have a more erect standing posture and gait. All introvert and extrovert people, when learning to control internal visceral functions, proceed by controlling first the contraction of voluntary muscles. They form certain individual patterns which evoke the sense of well-being. This helps to prevent the reinstatement of the anxiety pattern. In general, every pattern of impulses reaching the central nervous system from the viscera, muscles, and soma in general is associated with an emotional state. The muscular contraction, being voluntarily controllable, creates a feeling of power and of control over sensation and emotions. To every emotional state corresponds a personal conditioned pattern of muscular contraction, without which it has no existence. How does exaggerated hyperextension of the cervical and lumbar curve becomes habitual? Repeated emotional upheavals condition the child to adopt an attitude which brings a sense of safety and enables him to abate anxiety. Such passive safety is brought about by flexor contraction and extensor inhibition. Voluntary but not intended directives inhibiting the extensors are observed in all emotionally disturbed persons. In the long run, this becomes habitual and remains unnoticed. The whole character is affected. The partially inhibited extensors becomes weak, the hip joint flexes, and the head leans forward, which lead to exaggerated hyperextension of the cervical and lumbar curve. The lower anti-gravity mechanism tend to bring the body into the normal potent state, while avoiding anxiety reinstates the crouched pattern of safety. The anti-gravity mechanisms are at work without break. Like all fatigued nervous function, they are initially overactive. Hence the tonic contraction and string-like texture of the anti-gravity extensors. The overriding conscious control, however, prevents reflexive erect standing. If you live on intentional intellectual level, all your body functions are interfered with by voluntary directives. Conscious control and willpower, when properly directed, often improve certain details here and there, but the intellect is no substitute for vitality. A sense of the futility of life, tiredness, and the wish to give it all up is a result of overtaxing the conscious control with a task the reflexive and subconscious nervous activity is better fitted to perform. Moshe ended the chapter by, if you know what you are doing, and even more important, how you use yourself to act, you will be able to do things the way you want. Know thyself was the first said by the one who learned to know oneself. Thank you very much. stay healthy and be safe. Have a day that has a freedom of choice.